On Saturday, the 3rd of December 2022, the War Museum in Bloemfontein, South Africa, celebrated the launch of a new series of storybooks on the South African War, specifically aimed at children. During the event, children were introduced to the first book in the Wilted Flower Series, which is named A Petal Falls Through Time. The children and their parents who attended the book launch were treated to a recital of the first part of the book and a puppet show in this regard. From the onset, it was evident that the young ones were intrigued by the story and clearly enjoyed the event. Danae Swanepoel, human scientist at the War Museum, explains the need for such a book series.
The South African War of 1899 to 1902 had a profound effect on all who lived in South Africa at the time. Therefore, this part of history is very important to all South Africans. Through the years, many historical and academic books had been written about the war and what happened, but there was never really any youth literature to explain to children what happened during the war and especially what happened to children.
As a result, the director of the War Museum, Tongi Pretorius, decided to address this lack of children's literature on the war by initiating and launching a project to publish a series of illustrated storybooks on the war. The museum has partnered with a local author and illustrator, Renee Veldsman, to develop the book series focusing on telling the story of the war through the eyes of children. Apart from ensuring that the stories where children are the main characters are developed within a context that is historically and factually correct, it was likewise a challenge to present the stories in an idiom with which children of today could relate. In the first book of the series, a present-day young boy visits the museum with his parents. Like many children of today, he is not really interested in either the museum or the war. But then he mysteriously experiences a time travel incident, whereby he is propelled back in time. Suddenly, he as a modern-day child finds himself amongst other children of his age in the South African War period, and with them, he experiences the suffering of war firsthand in a concentration camp. Renee explains how she goes about developing the stories and related illustrations for the book series in collaboration with the staff of the War Museum.
I like to write by hand, so I always start when I have to write something. I start by getting a new notebook and a new pack of pens. And after having sorted out the structure in my mind, I just write, and that's the wonderful thing about writing. You don't really plan each and every sentence. In this case, I really just try to put myself in the character's position. It just kind of falls into place, and as you are busy writing, the illustrations kind of just form in your head. And sometimes I make preliminary sketches, but other times you kind of just follow the story. I start with the writing and then I move on to the sketches. The museum, the staff at the museum, Danae, Johan, Vicky, all of them really helped me brilliantly with all of my questions. Just from silly things, what the tents look like to what the people were wearing. I never really had formal training. I do have a degree in language practice, so I can string a few sentences together, but the drawing, it's trial by error. I kind of learned that just by sitting down and writing and drawing and coloring myself.
Apart from highlighting the suffering of children in the South African War through memorials on the grounds and several video documentaries, the War Museum also regards present-day children as one of its important target audiences. Danae shares the intent of the War Museum with this book series.
Education and publication are some of the core functions of the museum. Therefore, this book was also created to be an educational tool. The book is there to create the love for reading and history, but also to show the importance of museums. Children of today are the museum visitors of tomorrow. Therefore, the love of museums has to be cultivated from a young age.
Children often suffer most during a period of military conflict. Although the developed stories of the series are told within a context of misery and suffering, Renee is convinced that these stories eventually also reveal a positive message.
I love history. I'm constantly reading up on it, and war is a big part of history. And the biggest message that any war really has is that afterwards people get up, they rebuild their their lives, they rebuilt their cities, and it's no different for the Anglo-Boer War. I mean, absolutely everything was destroyed. So it's a sad story, yes, but if you look at the message, it's so positive. It says, no matter what happens, you can get up, you can deal with it, and I think that's very positive.
This book series is available in 3 national languages: Afrikaans, English and Sesotho. Marta Tulo, Education Officer of the War Museum, elaborates on the significance of having the book series also available in Sesotho, an indigenous African language predominantly used in the area.
It is important that we have an inclusive perspective on the South African War, as it affected all South Africans. Against this background, the publication of this book is an historical event. It is the first storybook for children on the South African War published in an indigenous language. This book, in the Sesotho language, therefore provides an African child with a better understanding of the history of the South African War and its consequences.
The museum encourages all parents and caregivers to support this project. These books will provide their young ones access to stories about children for children, as concluded by Danae.
The Wilted Flower book series will consist out of 5 books, and it will look at the lives of children during the war. Children will meet different characters and see what they experienced in different wartime situations. These books are definitely a must-have for all South African children.
The War Museum takes pride in the launch of this new book series and thanks all those who contributed to the resounding success of this project. We trust that the new book series will not only address the lack of children's literature on the war, but will also enlighten today's children on the suffering and impact this war had on all the people of South Africa.